I moved to America 7 years ago as a grad school student from Indonesia. I met my boyfriend a few months after I moved, and we've been together ever since. My boyfriend is an American. After I graduated, we had a serious discussion about where our relationship was headed. I made it very clear that I wanted to eventually get married and have children. My boyfriend echoed the sentiments. I remember asking him if he saw that happening with me because I didn't want to be in a relationship with no future. He told me he loved me and that we were definitely headed in that direction. As of last week, we've been dating for 7 years. We've occasionally talked about marriage, but we were both busy with our respective careers, so the timing didn't seem quite right. However, recently, my company announced that there's a chance that my department's work will be outsourced. I'm on an H-1B visa, temporary worker, so this means that I need to start looking for a job as soon as possible if I want to continue staying in America. Last week, during our anniversary, I brought this up. I asked him if he thought it was the right time to think about getting married, as that will also help with sorting out my visa issues. He looked like he was about to vomit. After much prodding, he confessed that he wasn't planning on us getting married before I was able to get a green card, permanent resident in America. I was incredibly confused because he'd never mentioned this before. His reason was that he didn't want to be used as a visa mule. His words, not mine, by me, and that he wanted to make sure that I married him because I loved him and not because it was a ticket to getting to stay in the US, which can only happen when I get a GC. It took me a while to process what he said, and I asked him if he'd be okay to move to Indonesia with me, which he wasn't. I did not react well and ended up leaving because I couldn't deal with what just happened. I am still in disbelief. I started dating him because he was the kindest, most thoughtful, and generous man I'd met. I now feel like I wasted 7 years. While the visa issues are certainly a problem, I did not date him with the intention of making him my safety net. I cannot believe that even after nearly a decade together, he doesn't know what kind of person I am. I feel like this relationship is possibly over, and it hurts. It hurts so much. A few days back, I made a post about how my boyfriend of 7 years didn't want to marry me because I was an immigrant on an H-1B, and he didn't want to be a visa mule. I got a lot of wonderful comments and messages, a few trolls too, but that's expected from Reddit, haha. Addressing some of the stuff in the comments, I've been on an H-1B visa for a bit more than 2 years now. I was on STEM OPT for about 3 years after grad school. I had terrible luck with the H-1B lottery, and I got one in the last round I was eligible to apply in. Getting PR in the US is not easy. I know people who've been here for 15 plus years who are still waiting for their PR. For those of you who texted me calling me a gold digger, you guys made me LOL. I am aware of the legalities around sponsoring a spouse for a PR, including the financial aspect. It shouldn't have been a problem for the following reasons. I'm a STEM major who recently shifted into management. I work for a large company, and I do quite well for myself. My boyfriend is a teacher, and our incomes are not comparable. He earns around $60,000, I earn close to $300,000. We've been living together for about 6 years. We have a shared account to pay for expenses like rent and utilities that we both deposit a percentage of our salary into. The rest of our money goes into our own private accounts, and we don't manage each other's money. Because I'm pretty frugal, I've saved up quite a bit of money in the form of savings and investments. If my boyfriend was worried about the legality of sponsoring me financially for more than 10 years, I would have happily discussed moving the money around. I was even considering buying a house, so we could have made that a joint ownership thing. The point is, we could have figured it out. I haven't relied on him financially ever, and I didn't intend on doing that in the future. I might not have considered everything, but you have to note that I thought about the marriage for visa thing very recently, only when the threat of possibly having to leave loomed over me. This isn't something I'd thought about in detail at all. Regarding my situation back home in Indonesia, I come from a very religious and conservative family and had a horrible childhood. My family doesn't support my career choices. I cut contact with my family when I moved to the US, so they are not in the picture at all. I was on great terms with my boyfriend's family. They loved me. Now, for the actual update. He is now my ex-boyfriend. I took a few days to collect myself and then reached out to him wanting to talk. He agreed. It turns out that he has been insecure about earning less than I did for a while. Apparently, his friends have been poking fun at our relationship, calling me the sugar mommy because I take care of most of the expenses. He never told me this until now. He apparently didn't feel like an equal because our pay differs so much, and started feeling that I was only with him as a quick way to get a PR here. I was speechless. I couldn't believe that his friends gaslighted him into doubting our relationship. I reminded him how he had supported me when I was in grad school, like getting me groceries when I had little money to spare, allowing me to stay with him rent-free in my last year of grad school to help me minimize expenses so I didn't have to take out a loan, letting me use his car when I was attending interviews. I told him that he did them because he loved me, and me taking on the majority of household expenses since I started working is my way of paying him back for all the things he did for me back then. He said that he gets what I'm saying, but also that he didn't expect me to start earning more than him straight off the bat. I asked if there was any chance he'd consider going to couples therapy, like some of you had suggested, and he declined because he didn't think he was being unreasonable. He said that he wanted to be the provider in a relationship and that he didn't feel like one in ours. So there's no going back from this unless I quit my job and found another that paid substantially less, which isn't going to happen. Well, long story short, we broke up. His family is in disbelief. They were hoping that he would propose soon. I've moved into an Airbnb for now. A little bit of good news to end this update with. My company offered me a similar role in a different department. However, this is based out of France, and there's a small decrease in pay. I've always dreamed about living in Europe, and I've accepted this offer. I've signed the relocation agreement, and I'll move there in the next 8 to 12 weeks. A few comments. People took apart my update to point out a discrepancy. I first said, I haven't relied on him financially ever, and later, I reminded him how he had supported me when I was in grad school, like getting me groceries when I had little money to spare, allowing me to stay with him rent-free in my last year of grad school to help me minimize expenses, so I didn't have to take out a loan, letting me use his car when I was attending interviews. I'm sorry for wording my feelings poorly, causing this confusion. I never asked or expected my ex to help me buy groceries or house me. I moved to the US to pursue a tech MBA from a top 20 school, and had scholarships and student loans that were going to help me cover the cost tuition and living expenses, so at no point did I need him to help me. I knew I was going to have a financially difficult time for 2 years, and I was prepared for this. My ex, however, did not like that I was eating cold sandwiches and instant ramen most of the time, and would bring me some groceries, vegetables, frozen food, and the like, because he wanted to make sure I was eating well. He was also the one who proposed the idea of me moving in with him, because he wanted us to live together and also thought it would lower my stress levels. He was an extremely kind, considerate, and generous man, and it was one of the reasons I fell in love with him. I am extremely grateful for his support. But I wasn't relying on it. Had he not done any of the above, I would have managed update foing. I'm back with an update after about a year of moving to France. My previous posts are on my profile if you guys want to check them out. I absolutely love it here. The language barrier is very real, but I'm taking classes, and the people around me have been incredibly helpful. I've spent the last year experiencing all the good things Europe offers. I've visited multiple cities in France, Netherlands, Belgium, Spain, Portugal, Switzerland, Denmark, Germany, and Luxembourg. I cannot believe how gorgeous all of these places are, and the more time I spend here, the more I think about how fortunate I am to be able to experience this. I'm soon traveling to Italy. I'm excited about everything. My work-life balance is also incredible. I was frequently putting in 10 to 12-hour work days in the US, and I can count on one hand the number of times I've had to work more than 8 hours a day here. I love the emphasis on personal time, and I cannot fathom going back to the way it was before. I haven't had the courage to get back into dating yet. My experience with the ex has left a really bad taste in my mouth. Even though immigration here is a lot easier than in the US and is not really one of my worries, the thought of things falling apart after putting in a significant amount of time and effort scares me. I'm considering therapy, but I haven't quite made the leap to do that yet. My ex reached out to me a few months after I moved. He faced a lot of backlash from his family after we broke up, and he wanted to discuss reconciliation because he realized the error of his ways. I told him exactly how he made me feel and that I could no longer trust him. I had decided to move on and advised him to do the same. He's had to downgrade his lifestyle as he could no longer afford to live the same way we did, and I could tell that it made him unhappy. Not going to lie, I did feel a pang of guilt and sadness after our conversation, but it is what it is. I got a bunch of messages asking me about what I do. I have an undergrad in comp science, and after a year of working, I decided to pursue an MBA. I was fortunate enough to get into one of the top 20 B schools with a scholarship that reduced my tuition by about 30%. I got into tech consulting initially and then switched to product management after a couple of years. Final update. It's been 3 years. I now live in the Netherlands. Switched over to another company last year. It's cold and wet most of the year, but this summer was glorious and at times hot enough to remind me of home. I went through therapy for a few months. I must admit that I was not fully committed to it. But talking, venting helps a lot. That and distance and time has definitely helped me heal. It's a bit hard making friends in Netherlands. Most people seem to want to stick to their existing social circles. I have made a few friends through the expat community, but these friendships need more time and effort to become something worthwhile. I am trying to date now. Signed up on a bunch of apps. Haven't really had a lot of success so far, but I'll keep putting myself out there. I still miss my ex sometimes, especially on days when I'm unwell, because it reminds me of how he used to take care of me and make me congee. I miss being cared for. And no, I haven't reached out. That chapter is truly done. I got a cat. She's a very loud girl. I'll add a photo to my profile. Life is kinda good, I guess. I need more friends. My mother-in-law texted one of my family members today, saying she and my father-in-law thought about calling Child Protective Services on me and my spouse, but decided not to. Basically, according to them, we are willfully endangering our baby by having multiple dogs in the household and fostering dogs through a reputable and responsible rescue. Ever since we were pregnant with said child, they've been making remarks that we need to rehome most of our dogs. We have 6 of our own and 2 fosters, simply due to the number we have. My spouse and I know it's more dogs than most have, but we live in a rural area, have a massive outdoor area the dogs spend hours in, and don't keep or foster dogs that show any inkling of aggression towards humans. It's not even uncommon to have this many dogs where we live, and some people around us have many more than we do. Our yard is sandy, so the dogs do track sand onto our hard surface floors that we vacuum daily. Because there is often some sand from letting the dogs in and our counters are cluttered, they consider our house dirty. By comparison, their house is always clean enough that you could eat off their floor. The worst part of this all is they admit Child Protective Services wouldn't do anything. Our child is healthy, happy, and clean. Their doctor says they are in perfect health, and the dogs have never so much as accidentally scratched, stepped on, or even looked at them wrong. We don't let the dogs in their bedroom or play area and actively train our dogs so they are good family members, either as our own dog or fosters. The dogs are also well taken care of, up to date on all shots, and friendly. They can be energetic due to their various breeds, but we make sure any rough and tumble play is outside in their designated yard. My spouse and I also work in jobs that involve children, and have been in situations where CPS had to rightfully be called. It stings so much that someone would think to use Child Protective Services workers to bully us into rehoming our actual dogs and stop fostering, just because they admit they don't understand how or why we live the way we do. I think I'm more heartbroken than anything, because I can't fathom why someone would even hypothetically put us through this. Even our non-dog-loving family members have acknowledged our dogs are all very friendly and our home is a safe environment for our child. As much as I love each and every one of my furry toddlers, dogs, I know they are animals and would never keep one if I had any suspicion they could hurt my child or their friends. I know Child Protective Services wouldn't actually remove our child, but I can't stop wondering if every knock or phone call is from a worker starting an investigation. Would I be an a-hole if I ceased contact with my mother-in-law and father-in-law? I don't know if I even have anything to say to them. I don't know if I can even look at them. I can't even sleep because I'm worried they'll end up calling, even though they said they wouldn't. Why would they even mention this? How can they say they love us and not acknowledge how much an investigation into a false allegation could affect our child, our jobs, everything? Sorry if this is all over the place. If anyone even reads this. I know they never really liked us, since my spouse and I are very different from them. I just never thought they'd try to do this to us, let alone trying to use my family against us too. Update: I am going no contact with the in-laws for the foreseeable future, as is our child. My spouse is leaning towards no contact, but at the very least, severely limiting contact. They have spent all day today, after our phone call last night, insisting that they weren't actually threatening to call Child Protective Services. They refused to understand why we were both so upset and kept trying to turn the blame back around on us, saying we weren't listening to them, and the Child Protective Services comments weren't a big deal. This unfortunately fits a larger pattern of them trying to control our lives and being angry, disappointed/annoyed that we just have very different lives. The fact my spouse and I are very equal and independent people is a constant issue they keep dancing around. Nothing about us is traditional, and despite what they claim, they don't love that about us. Most disagreements or attempts to control us come from these differences and why we should actually act more like them. Also, to address some questions in the comments. 1. We do live in a rural area controlled by the county, not the city. There are no restrictions on animals as long as they are healthy and not exotic. We have a lot of dogs for a city, but out here, people aren't even surprised when we say we have 6. Many have at least 3, and then a variety of other animals on their respective properties. We just didn't want other animals, as we've been involved in dog rescue for several years. 2. Our household operates more like a small farm than a typical suburban household. 3. My spouse and my own work schedules allow our household to operate the way it does. I won't go into specifics, but we'll say the way it is arranged allows one or the other of us to care for our child at home versus putting them in daycare. This also makes daily cleaning a lot more feasible, along with my spouse and I being very equal partners. Okay, so here's the comments. Somebody said, without addressing the pet situation, I think that it is deplorable that your mother-in-law would threaten to contact Child Protective Services, much less via a third-party conversation. Your husband should probably take the lead in resolving this issue because they are his parents. Stopping contact will have serious repercussions between him and his parents. Ultimately, you need to take care of your immediate family first and foremost. Not the whole, another said. I mean, me personally, I wouldn't have that many dogs, maybe 1 or 2, and certainly not that many around a child. Then there's the whole foster dog situation as an accident waiting to happen. Is that something your in-laws can say something to you and your husband about being concerned about their grandchild? Yes, most certainly. Is it something they call CPS about because they think you're intentionally putting your child in danger? No, not the whole. Original poster replied, they talked to us once about it last summer, and we explained everything we do to keep our child and the dogs safe. I fully recognize it's more dogs and potential risk than most people are anywhere near comfortable with. We have designated dog and non-dog areas of our house. It's not small to mitigate risk and never leave our child alone with the dogs. I fully trust all of them around our child, but accidents do happen, so I'm not going to set them up for one to happen. My spouse and I love dogs, but they are animals, and we always have that in mind, especially when it comes to our child. One comment said, it sounds like you know what a potential nightmare having Child Protective Services called on you can be. It can be a huge problem, even for a family without issues. You don't know the given Child Protective Services worker you will get, or the little problem that is small that day that they might assume is pervasive. They are literally playing with having your child taken away from you. You say you are a safe, good home, and it seems like you are, but as I said, you never know what will happen in that surprise moment when a stranger is there to evaluate you. It's like driving without a seatbelt. It's probably going to be fine, but you don't do it because the one time it's not fine, the repercussions are severe. Especially in your case too, where you could lose your jobs on top of losing your child. They threatened you with a forced game of Russian roulette, and it's totally acceptable to go no contact with them because of it. Don't risk everything about your family, your child, and your livelihood on people who have no care for you at all.